The following is a production of Texas Lutheran University. For more information, please visit tlu.edu.
Welcome. Hi. I feel like we need to all move to the front in a little group. Welcome to the Brown Lecture for Spring 14. You've heard his name, Amit Dodani, and he's going to be speaking today about his organization, which is My Name, My Story. I first met Amit at a conference called the Ashoka U Exchange, which is students, faculty, staff members, social entrepreneurs from all over the world who meet together once a year to exchange ideas about how to teach social entrepreneurship, how to do it, what's going on in the field. I connected with Amit and immediately knew that I needed to share him with the TOU and Seguin communities. And so he's here today. I want to tell you a little bit about him. One thing I will tell you is he has a lot of awards, but I'm not going to list them because you're going to find out why during his talk. But I will tell you that he's the first speaker I've ever booked. When I came down to the airline website, I had to book him as a child because he's 16 years old, a junior in high school, and I think that makes his story even more amazing. The second thing is that I am very envious that he discovered his passion so young. And you will feel that passion as he speaks. I mean, you truly will feel it. The third thing is that TOU is going to be the first My Name, My Story chapter at the collegiate level. And we met with prospective students last night. They're very, very excited. If you'd like to get involved after you hear him speak tonight, we are going to meet in the ASC tomorrow at noon to talk about where we're going to take this chapter of MNMS. So you know his name. Now he will tell you his story. Amit.
Cool. You know, I've spoken to crowds ranging from 12 people to 30,000 in the Key Arena in Seattle. My favorite is always talking to a smaller group because I feel like I can connect with people more. And I think that's the most incredible feeling is when you're on stage. And I always say that the most comfortable place for me is when I'm on stage. See, when you're on stage, it's as if you're having a conversation with yourself. The only benefit is people can comment on it. And they can laugh when they want to, and they can say "aw" when they want to say "aw," and they can clap when they like what you're saying. And they normally won't say anything too bad to hurt you. Normally. But yeah, the stage is a place for me that is it's special. You see, I've never been a stage person until just a few years ago. And a few of you who were at the workshop yesterday know what I'm about to talk about. But my personal story is I was a kid who loved to read. And being a kid who loved to read, I would read everything. And I would have some pretty intriguing thoughts as well that came with that. But the only problem is I could never communicate what I felt. And it was very difficult growing up and having so much to say but no way to really say it. And I had a speech impediment. I couldn't say my C's, K's, S's, X's, Q's, T's, the list went on. In essence, if I tried to say the word God, I would say the word dog. If I said dog, it would be dog. The list went on. And growing up, it was kind of cute at first, in first and second grade, you know, when you accidentally say "dog" and people laugh like, "Oh, he's so cute." But then you start getting to fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh when things start to get a little bit more real, and the jokes aren't as funny as much since you've heard them thousands of times over and over. Now, my story kind of progresses in an odd way. In fifth grade, I tried to do my first public speech. It was in my own home with about 10 people. I went up there and I was ready to go with my paper. And I just started bawling and went straight to my room. The second time was at an award ceremony. It was in 6th grade. My parents won a huge award for their business, and I got up there, no paper, I was ready to go, and I just started bawling. Luckily, they thought it was tears of joy, not sadness. So it worked out. But it wasn't the teasing or the quote-unquote bullying that got to me, no. What got to me was my own self-confidence. The fact that I wasn't able to have a conversation with people when I wanted to have a conversation with them, and that hurt me. And when I would be hanging out in the yard and say something, laughs would come and things like that. Even my own family, my extended family, said that I had a problem, that I had to change something. Hell, I thought they had a problem. Like, why are you speaking like that? It's Don, not dog. But they didn't believe me. Went to a speech therapist. This was interesting. She tried to put one of those things down your mouth to control your tongue. I hated that. I felt like I'd throw up. I yelled at her. I said, why are you doing this to me? She said, because I have to fix you. I'm like, what's wrong with me? You're the one sticking the thing down my throat. And every time someone would tell me that I had a problem, it would just kick me a little bit more. Every single time. Because I was so convinced that I didn't. I was so convinced that I was normal. Maybe a small issue here and there, but just like everyone, right? But it kept on getting me and kept on getting to me. Then rolled around the next year. In 7th grade, I tried out for the mock trial and debate team. It makes no sense for someone who can't say their words to try out for the mock trial and debate team. God knows why I did it. The teacher who was coaching it was named Mrs. Bader. She had been in a speech class with me before. She understood my issue, and she recognized it full on. She very well could have completely denied me from the team, knowing that I could have been a liability in a huge way. God knows why, but I was chosen to the team. And I never thought that I would have a big role in this program. There were so many other talented kids in my school. I go to a very competitive Catholic school in LA. And my first try to get a closing argument, I remember I was standing there and I was ready to go, and I was shivering the whole time. I led to bickering back and forth. You know, when you speak in public, you never know what your body's doing sometimes. I know I was giving a speech for Treasure in 8th grade, and my entire body was moving under the podium. The only people who were laughing were the ones behind me, watching me as my whole entire body shook and shook. Because you're so scared you're going to mess up. Because we're so occupied with what other people think about us sometimes. And it's difficult to think about what we want to say. And so these two coaches, Mr. and Mrs. Bader, took me on full faith. They had the belief in me that nobody else did. And that was incredible to me. Because they trusted me. They said, we're going to put you in a courtroom with the real judge for a real competition with our coaching jobs on the line, and we trust you. No one else had ever said that to me before. No. And rarely does that ever happen when people have faith in you and most people don't have faith in you. And so they believed in me, and they turned what was once my greatest weakness into my greatest strength. And for that, I will never be able to thank them enough. And so Mr. and Mrs. Bader, I feel like for me, were my first mentors in my life. They were the first people to really trust me. And when I say mentors, often people refer to someone in a movie-like situation like The Karate Kid, when there's an old Chinese guy going up and teaching the guy how to fight. No. A mentor in life is someone who inspires you to do something that's bigger than what you're already doing right now. And the first mentor that I ever had was Mr. and Mrs. Bader. And I'm never going to forget them. And to this day, every time I speak, no matter where it is, whether it's with one-on-one conversation, I will always mention their names. For some of us, it's an educator, like it was for me. The hero in the story isn't myself. No. The hero in the story is the person who believed in what I could do. In this case, an educator. For others, it might be a coach, a friend, a family member. The list goes on. But this mentorship gave me some sort of hope, and I went into 9th grade. This was only 2 years ago. And I ran for vice president. And everyone was like, oh my God, he's a gifted speaker. Like, that's not even fair for the other girl. And I'm like, little do you know. And then my relative from Canada came down. See, I'm Indian, right? And so my relatives are kind of funny. Indian relatives like to say some pretty funny things. They're not really used to being polite. And so she comes back from Canada, and the first thing she says is like, oh, remember when you could say all those words and you were so funny? Yeah. And I'm like, I hate you. And then I thought about it. I'm like, wow. so many awards in that 8th grade year that I was not even conscious of how far I had came. I completely forgot about what I had been through. And I almost kicked myself for that. I said, how could you forget about where you were? And then I thought about it, and I told my dad about this. He said, you should create a website about yourself. I'm like, Dad, that's the most pretentious thing you've ever said. No one's going to want to read that. I'm a small, brown, Indian 14-year-old. No way this blows up. And so I said, what if I connected with other people? He's like, all right, what do you mean? I said, what if I created a place where people could share their stories and connect with others in a way that's completely different? It's not a blog. It's not somewhere where people go to vent their feelings. No, no, no. It's meant to inspire. It's meant to really, really touch people's hearts. And he said, okay. And so we created it. And throughout this next piece that I have for you, I'm going to talk about my story, but I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to talk to you about the mentality that I had and how I feel like right now I'm a developing social entrepreneur, which I'm sure a lot of you are in the class for right now. So I figured there was 2 ways I could go in my life. My philosophy that I thought of 10 minutes before this talk was there are 2 different people. There are people who watch the world change, and there are people who change the world. And I said, I'd like to change the world, because if I don't know how the world's going to change. Either way, we keep on moving. Every day things change, people change, murders happen, news happens. And the news continues to remind us of how crappy the world is. It's good business. We're continuously told that the world is going to keep changing and we just got to adapt to it. That in high schools, now it's okay to drink and drive. We'll give you some way to support you. We'll hope that doesn't happen. We'll try and use the fear tactic and shock effect on you. We'll try and scare you away. That it's okay to be involved in dating abuse when you're younger. It's just going to happen. That's the way the world's changing. No, no, no. You see, my philosophy and what I've learned is that I want to be the second person. And I want to try and inspire people to be that second person. I'm 16 years old. Just turned 16 2 months ago. Never, never, never will I let anyone tell me I'm too young to be doing what I'm doing. My favorite group of people to talk to, is adults. Kids, high schoolers, scary for me. They're my peers. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's too much of a touchy subject. But I love talking to high schoolers, but it's very interesting talking to adults. Because they're very close-minded. Because normally, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to say that as we grow older we try and learn more, that's not the case. As we grow older, that open eyeball that we had when we were infants and retaining all the information in the world for ourselves starts to close. And that optimistic attitude that we have is spit on by our experiences, by everything that we've been through. And that's why we think that we need to adapt to the world. So I said, if I want to be this change maker, I need to find one thing, and that's purpose. Now, Echoing Green, the organization, is one of the largest social enterprises in the entire nation, if not the world, has a very good idea of what purpose is, and they break it up into 3 separate parts. And I briefly touched upon this yesterday, but I'm going to go in depth about it today. They said, 1, it has to be right for the world. It has to be right for the world. But more importantly, it has to be right for you. So the first step of it's right for you. And they said heart plus head equals hustle. Because if it really means something to you, and it really meant something to me, empathy really meant something to me. being able to connect with people really meant something to me. And I said, all right, this is right for me. This is what I want to do. And I said, all right, let me identify my strengths and my weaknesses. Luckily, by the grace of God, I know I can speak. I'm not organized at all. I need someone to help me with that. I'm not athletic. I can't sing. I'm no science or math genius. So I said, what can I do? What can I do? And I said, I got to use my voice. So I identified my strengths and weaknesses. And then I tapped into my experiences. And I'm going to use a metaphor for this. So there was a dad and a son, and they were in a park. And there was a giant log over there. And this son was about 5 years old. And the son goes up to his dad, and he's like, Dad, you think I can pick up that log? The dad's like, absolutely. Son, if you use all your strength, you can pick up that log. And the son goes back, and he tries, and he tries, and he tries to pick it up, and it's a heavy log. And there's no way he's going to pick up that log. There is no way. And he's trying, and he's pulling on it, trying to make it budge, but it's too big for him. So he goes back to his dad, and he goes, Dad. Yes, son? I can't pick up the log. You told me I could. He goes, son, if you use all your strength, you'll be able to pick up that log. The son goes back and he goes and grabs the log and he's trying to move it, and it's not working, it's not budging. And he starts to get frustrated and mad. He's trying to do it all on his own. And it just won't budge. So he goes back to his dad. And he goes, Dad, you told me I could do that. You told me I could pick up that log. And the dad goes, son, what did I tell you? He goes, you said I could pick up that log. He goes, no, son, what did I tell you exactly? And he goes, well, you said if I use all my strength, I'll be able to pick up the log. So the dad looks at him and goes, son, you didn't use all your strength. He goes, you didn't use me. And the son looks at him and goes, what do you mean? Who are you? I'm pretty strong myself. I don't need you. He goes, son, listen to me. I'm part of your story now. We've grown up together. I've raised you. I've loved on you. But don't you ever forget that it's not your job to do everything alone. And don't ever think for even a second that your story is just you. No. Son, your story is a culmination of your experiences, influences, failures, successes. Every single person that has come in contact with you in your life is what your story is. You don't need to go through some tragic accident to define your story. No. Because your story, son, right now, you're lucky to say that at 5 years old, you're a kid with a dream. But don't you ever try and do that dream alone. Because I'm always going to be there for you. And at that moment, the son didn't understand what the hell he just said. But I think he realized that he had someone there for him. And often we forget about that. So when identifying my cause, I realized that I needed help. That's how I brought on a lady by the name of Miss Julie LaBelle. Miss Julie LaBelle, when the Columbine happened, she was a crisis relief counselor. And so while everyone was running away from the Columbine, and while the news was talking about it, she was going to the Columbine. To this day, when she hears any kind of abrupt sound, any disturbance in the peace, she shivers. She wasn't there for the accident, for what happened that day. But she knew the stories of every single kid who went through that. She understands empathy like no other. She understands leadership. She understands how hurt people can be, and no one can know about it. How awful things can get in an environment where empathy is simply non-existent. So the second identifier for purpose is that it was good for the world. And for something to be good for the world, you would have to identify some sort of a problem. The problem that I identified was a lack of empathy. I'm going to get into that more later. But a lack of empathy. But for anyone, it's incredible how people think. The most incredible change makers, the most incredible successful people, people like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all wanted to not make money, they wanted to solve a problem. Steve Jobs wanted to change the world. He wanted to make everything so much more efficient, so much more innovative, and have people thinking at an entirely different level, and he was just one man. Just by himself, he wanted to do that. Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream. I have a dream. I have a dream. Anyone could have gone up and said that speech. If you think about it. If you listen to the recording of Martin Luther King's speech, his rhetoric, of course being brilliant, is something that anyone can replicate. I have a dream that one day this nation will live out the full duty of its creed. That my sons or daughters will go to school, and the rest is history. See, I love using Martin Luther King in my speeches because I'm sure if I could have a conversation with him, he would be like, I just got so lucky. Now they have a whole day for me and a day off for you kids. All I did was make one speech. How anyone could have done it. But the one thing I feel like he would tell me, he would say, I identified something that I truly believed in, and I realized that I had a purpose, and I wasn't just going to let the world change and not actually change the world myself. And I wasn't going to sit around and watch everything fall apart and my family get torn apart and people I didn't know get torn apart. He didn't do it for himself. No. There was a bigger issue that he was trying to solve. And when he was able to identify with that, that's when the game changes. That's when everything gets a little bit more interesting. So the last part of the purpose, the work on purpose, as Edwin Green calls it, is to be bold. Be really, really bold. The hardest part about starting my organization is telling my own friends. That was the hardest part of this entire thing. Being able to go up to my best friend and be like, listen, I'm doing something that's a little different. I'm going to try and change the world. What do you think? I guarantee you if I went up to one of my friends and said that, they'd be like, what the hell are you smoking? That was my biggest fear. You three are high schoolers out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? What grade are you in?
9.
9?
I'm in 8.
High school's an interesting time. It's difficult because sometimes the most successful people in high school are the ones who are hated the most for being successful. We don't have an empathetic society right now, and that hurts. It's difficult when someone wants to do something that's completely different. You know, you ever think about it? We have so many brilliant people on this country. We have 6 billion people in this world. You would think there were more Martin Luther King Jr.'s. And there are a lot of them. A lot of them behind the scene. But only a few can be bold about it. Only a few can take rocks to the head when they stick their nose above the ground. The world likes to step on us. You know, I do similar talks in high schools all the time, and it's very sad how much they relate to being spit on, to being kicked, not physically, mentally, continuously being told that they can't, and they can't, and they can't. That hurts. You know, I do this thing with high schoolers where if they like what I'm saying, I ask them to snap. It's kind of cool, just gives me a little gauge of where they're at. They love snapping when I talk about being hurt. And it scares me. And I'm so happy I have this opportunity to talk to college students, some high schools, and some educators about this. Because it's such a universal problem, this idea of empathy, and what I've latched myself onto. So there's, in my opinion, and this is a statement from Ashoka, there are 4 different qualities of the social entrepreneur. The first is empathy. And I like to define empathy. Some people, when I ask them, they say, you know, it's stepping into the shoes of another person. You know, being able to experience what someone else is feeling. I like to define empathy as to burn for justice. To burn for justice. That's not just recognizing that the person sitting next to you today could be going through something incredibly serious in their lives and you may not know about it. No. That's you knowing about what's going on in this entire world, not only the person sitting next to you, but universally, and addressing the issue of injustice. I had a speaker come to me recently at my school, and he told me, he came and he talked about racism. I go to a school in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. In our opinion, there is no racism anymore in this world. We live in our own picturized, idealized society. He came in and he told us about some of the most disgusting things I've ever heard about racism and injustice. And some of the people in my class, I kid you not, they said, we didn't like the speaker. I said, why didn't you like him? He was too mean. He made it seem like it was our fault. And I said, are you kidding me? Whose fault is it? Are we just going to keep blaming other people for problems? Are we not even going to try and connect people around us? Are we going to let people get spit on and kicked and pushed to the ground and pushed some more? No. Empathy is an incredible characteristic. My personal experience with it came when I spoke at a school in Anaheim, California, and spoke to a group of 2,000 kids. It was for 60 seconds. I didn't think I made an impact on anyone. I didn't realize what kind of impact I made. You see, this girl sent me an email. Her name, I won't use her real name, I'm going to call her Joanne. Joanne sent me an email. She's a 15-year-old student, sophomore, I believe, at a school in that area. I don't know who she is. She just sent me an email. She was at the top. She goes, coming into that talk, I had tried to commit suicide. I was scared. I was anxious. I didn't know what I was going to do the next day. God, I didn't even know if I was going to be there the next day. She said, I felt so lonely for so long. I have friends, yeah, but no. I'm lonely. And I've had a rough time and nobody knows about it, so nobody can even try to care about it. She said, when I heard your story up there, I realized that if I were to take my own life, I wouldn't have a story to tell myself. And I kid you not, that's what she wrote in the email. She said, if I were to take my own life, I wouldn't have a story to share myself, and I wouldn't be able to save someone just like me. A month later, I called her. I said, hey Joanne, how you doing? She goes, I'm great, I just got out of rehab. It took me aback. I said, Joanne, are you okay? She goes, yeah, I'm going to be all right. I said, are you sure? She says, yes, I'm going to be all right. I said, who's helping you right now? She goes, my friends. I said, good. I felt guilty when I received that email. Why? Because I wasn't able to identify that one of the people sitting in the 2000, one of those people had a serious issue in their lives, and I'm sure there are more that didn't tell me. She is the hero in the story. There are so many people like her. There are so many people who are lonely, who are scared. And it doesn't happen to just sensitive people. No. It happens to people who are hurt. And there are so many like her, but she was brave enough to reach out and share who she was with the world. And when you can have empathy, is when you can share your story. And not only share your own story, but be able to connect with other people's stories in ways unimaginable. And wow, is that powerful. Empathy, Bill Drayton of Ashoka calls empathy the root of all evil. And that's very intriguing to me, because there's so many problems out there, but they could all be solved if people knew about those problems. We did an activity yesterday called eye gazing, a few of the people who were in this room. And they had to look into the eyes of another person, whether they knew them or not, for about 15 to 30 seconds. And they were laughing, and it was funny. And then they didn't say if they were feeling, thinking, or seeing. And a few of them was laughing, and it was interesting. One person said that when they were looking at someone who they didn't know, it was less awkward. It's almost comfortable. Another said that they felt like they got to know the person in those 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 seconds. I joked around after. I said, you can't hold a conversation with someone for 15 seconds? Aren't you supposed to look people in the eyes when you're talking to them? We get so caught up. I get so caught up in the world that we're living that sometimes we fail to recognize the small things that make up who we are and the interactions that we have. I was talking about it yesterday. We're so glued to that cell phone. We're so glued looking down, texting, sending emojis, all that good stuff, to not talk to people. Communication is so important. I've been in rooms where there are kids of all different backgrounds from one school There's about a class of 150 kids, and there's about 11 people in this room from 7th to 12th. 2 of them are sitting there, they're both juniors. When I finish my speech, one of them starts crying. He's the one who was completely quiet the whole time. I didn't know why. He looked fine. He looked like an athlete to me. He looked like he was just focused on a big game tonight. He starts crying. I'm like, sir, why are you crying? Do you want to share with the group? He goes, yes. And he says that a few weeks ago was the anniversary of his father's death. Then the person sitting next to him starts crying. And I said, my man, do you want to share why you're crying with the group? He says, yeah. A few weeks ago was the anniversary of my mother's death. And I said, do you two know each other? He said, kinda. You two in the same grade? He said, yes. I said, did you ever even bother to ask about these kind of stuff? He goes, no. So you're telling me you never knew that you guys had something so similar going on in your lives at about the same exact time? You were probably in the same classroom on numerous occasions? He goes, no, we didn't. We didn't. I said, I'm sorry. That's not their fault. My story, as much as it creates clubs, does activities in different places, the one thing that makes us different is our ability to connect people and give people the opportunity to talk, to open up. It doesn't matter if you're 45, 50, 60, 30, 20, 10, 3. You can still have a conversation with someone. You know, when we talk to babies, we have a conversation with them even if they're not talking to us. So we just look into their eyes. And all their emotions come out. Babies are the most open people in the world. When they have to poo, they scream. When they have to sleep, they scream. When they're hungry, they scream. They will never fail to not tell you how they're feeling. But when a girl like Joanne is about to commit suicide, she doesn't even scream. She keeps it silent. That's not her fault. No, that's not her fault. I just wish there was a platform for her to share what she's going through. Not just get help, make friends. And that was only the first quality of social entrepreneur. Empathy. The second is critical thinking, the ability to make big decisions. You know, there are times when, again, I'm 16 years old, and the people on my board, like Ryda and Miss LaBelle, and my parents as well, have helped me ask me questions that sometimes I don't know the answer to. But I'm crazy. I have this crazy idea that we can get anything in the world accomplished, but at the same time, I'm realistic in the sense that I want to do it the right way. Coming to a place like Texas Lutheran was a decision that we made, that we felt would be thinking big. For the students in this room, yesterday we decided that there will be a chapter on this campus. And I already told Ryder last night, I said, we've done our job. These people are empowered. Making big decisions. When Alicia came up to me and she said, look, we can make this happen. We want to be the first. I said, really? Let me tell you about a concept that I once learned. It's called the concept of the first follower. Every time I talk about this with kids, they're like, what is a first follower? You see, leadership is so overrated. I wouldn't even call myself a leader. I just happen to be speaking on stage often and doing things that leaders, quote unquote, should do. The best leaders are the best followers. There's a video of a guy, he's at some sort of carnival, music carnival, and there's music going on. He starts dancing shirtless. Look it up, shirtless guy dancing, first follower concept on YouTube. And he's going crazy, dancing, 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 going nuts. It's him for about 2 minutes. One person follows him. In the next 30 seconds, you get 300 people dancing. In a minute, you get 600. And they're dancing away. Any leader needs his first follower. Any leader. No one can do this game alone. This game of life is too hard. I'm young. I don't know everything. But I hope, just like my father is that in 20 years from now, I'm going to still have the mindset that I can't do this alone. And don't you dare tell me to stop training. Which brings me to my next point. The third quality is creative thinking. I'm going to tell you a story. I was at my girlfriend's family party, and there was a girl there, a little girl, and her name was Isadora. Isadora was the cutest girl I had ever met. She was about 5 years old, and she was wearing a cute little princess dress. And my girlfriend goes up to her and goes, "Isadora, how you doing?" They start talking, have a nice conversation. She's just so cute, just saying, "Yeah, I'm good. All smiles, no sadness." She's young. And then my girlfriend says, "Isadora, what do you want to be when you grow up?" So I don't know. No. She says, "Isadora, you gotta have some idea what you want to be." So I don't know, princess. I don't know. Isadora, you gotta know something. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, why does she need to answer that question right now? Then another family member came over and goes, "Isadora, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do?" She says, "I don't know. Why are you asking these questions?" And I didn't say this, but I really wanted to. I said, "Why are you asking this question if she tells you some answer that you don't like, and she tells you that she wants to be a singer, an artist, an athlete, and you tell her that she can do that now, but in 10 years from now, you're going to tell her that she's not talented enough, too short, not smart enough, that she's this color and not that she doesn't fit the part? If you're going to ask her what she wants to be when she grows up, you sure as hell better follow through on that." Isadora just smiled. She just smiled. It's too often when we're so caught up in the question, what do we want to do when we grow up? And we don't ever think about who we want to be when we grow up. It's so easy for Isadora to think it. But then when she gets older, I pray, I cross my fingers, that she's going to stick to whatever she wants to be. And she's going to have that creative mindset, that creative mentality. And maybe some of you are thinking that I'm crazy and that he hasn't been through life yet and that he's too young. Sure, I'm young. Sure, there's going to be so many more struggles that I'm going to have to face in my own life. I went through a period of my life, and I never shared this story before on stage, but I will now. Because this is a religious facility, and I feel comfortable sharing. I went through a stage in my life where I was considered blind. I was diagnosed with something called optic neuritis. There's about 5 people in the world who've ever had optic neuritis, who are as young as me. That's something that you're not supposed to have when you're this young. I was playing basketball one day, And I'm not that great at basketball, but I'm good enough to catch the ball. But when I was playing that day, I was going through and I was running, and he threw me the ball and I hit my face. And I was like, whoa. Next thing I know, my left eye is all blurry and I can't see. I texted my mom that day with my right eye. I'm like, Mom, I need glasses. So that time I had long hair. I was like, all right, sick. I'm going to get glasses, short hair, roll into school really fresh. I'm going to look good. So I go to the doctor, I'm like, yo, doc, I need glasses, hook me up. I knew the doctor, it was nice. He's like, all right, put these on. He puts little things on where you can see what your prescription is, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, all right, this is not it, this is not it, this is not it. And he's like, you sure? Then he does this thing where he puts an orange light to my right eye, and he closes my left, and he goes, can you see this? I go, yeah. He goes, all right. So he puts his hand over his right eye. He puts the orange light to my left eye. He goes, can you see this? I said, no. He goes, son, there may be a bigger problem. And I was like, what do you mean, doc? I'm not going to get glasses. I saw those Ray-Bans already ready for me. He goes, no, son, you're going to have to go to this doctor at USC and check it out. I'm like, why at USC? It's like 45 minutes away. I don't want to go to USC. He goes, he knows how to deal with these kind of situations. So I go to the doctor at USC, and I'm like, all right, cool, he's going to fix me up. It's good. I walk in, he goes, all right, you have something that the last time I saw this case, it was in Fidel Castro. I was like, what does that have to do with anything? Basically, son, it's really rare. And it could lead to something called multiple sclerosis. I didn't know what that was at the time. And my parents refused to let me Wikipedia it. He goes, son, you might have some white stuff in your head that you might not be able to get out. And I'm like, don't even tell me more about this. There's no way I have this. There's a very good chance that you do. He explained to me more about optic neuritis. I learned what it was. I was supposed to be blind, according to them, for about 8 weeks, 3 months. And I went home that night and I prayed. And I wouldn't consider myself Hindu, Catholic, Christian, Lutheran, etc. I would consider myself a very faithful person, and I believe in something above. So I prayed to what I believe in. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried. And interestingly enough, there was one person who was there with me the whole way. It was my best friend. His name is Harmon. And he came to my house every single day. I lived about 30 minutes away from school at the time. He came to my house every single day. He just sat with me and talked. When I got to school back that first day, one of my good friends, Natalie, was walking and she goes, Amit. And I'm like, hey, who's this? So what are you saying? It's Natalie. Like, what are you? And she's yelling at me from far away. I'm like, who's this? Natalie. Well, no, I'm going through a little issue. I didn't tell anyone about what it was. I went home. Han was the only one who knew. I ended up not taking any treatment, and I was healed in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The doctors called it some kind of medical miracle. I said I just got lucky. But the only reason I felt like I got through that is 2 things. Because I really, really, really wanted to get better. And because I had someone to be with me the whole way. And there were things at my life at that stage where I could have given up. That I could have said that I wasn't going to do certain things and stop playing basketball and things like that at the time. But no. Creative thinking isn't just artsy activities, no. Artsy moves, doing different things that go beyond the norm, out of the box. No, creative thinking is having the ability to dream. And the last quality of social entrepreneur is grit. Just flat out grit. And those discontinuities that happen in life, debt, problems at home, problems with friends, relationship issues, child issues, etc. It's grit. Gets you through them. There have been 4 stages in my journey so far. There's a moment of obligation. There's a first try. There's discontinuities. And there's when it goes from orgo to econ. A moment of obligation is a moment like this. It's when I'm sitting at a room in a diversity day, and I had a speaker come into my school. This was 2 years ago when MNMS was just founded, just starting up. And this speaker comes in, he's talking to us, it's a bunch of teenage boys, all right? So about 214-year-olds. And he's talking to us about connection, he's talking to us about opening up, trying to share who we are. So there comes a period where we're all gathered in the center of the gym, and there's a mic up there, open mic, and people go up and share out what they're going through. For the first few, all that was happening was people were clapping. And I was like, what is that doing for anyone? Clapping for their failures. Clapping for their struggles. Clapping for what they've been through. What is that going to do for anyone? And I kept on figuring out what was going on, and I was like, why is he making us doing this? There's no point to this. People just sharing their story doesn't do anything. Then one person came up, and I want you to imagine the perfect kid. The guy that everyone loves in high school, college, the job place, whatever. Guy who everyone thinks is perfect. I'm going to name him John. I won't use his real name. He was athletic. He was good looking. He was the nicest kid I've ever met. He was the man. Star of the football team. Just the guy. A really nice guy. And John went up there. John did something that no one would ever see. John's walking up and everyone was like, what is John going up for? He's perfect. There's no way John's going up. What could John have a problem with? It's John. The guys are like, all right, there's no way. It must be something small. What is this? Come on. John goes up and John's shaking. He's holding the mic just like I am right now. And he's breathing heavy. He's breathing really heavy. We're all waiting. What is John going to tell us? What is John going to say? There's no way. John has problems. And John does something that I've never seen a 14-year-old boy do in front of 200 other 14-year-old boys. He starts to cry. And he holds the mic and he's shivering. He's going back and forth. It's like what I was talking about earlier. When you're up on stage, you're shivering. He's crying, he's shivering. Because he's scared what he's about to say. He's never told anyone else before. He goes, recently, my grandma was diagnosed with cancer. Even more recent than that, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And I am so scared. He slowly puts the mic down. He slowly sets it on the stage. And one person does something that was beyond me. He goes up and he gives John a hug. Another person goes up. Another person goes up. Another person goes up. And next thing you know, you got 214-year-old boys in the center of the gym hugging each other, crying. Half of those boys hated each other before this. All it took was one person, one hero. That was my moment of obligation. When I realized that people have stories. Following John, there were about 5 other young men who I thought I was close to that shared things that I would not imagine were going on in their life. And I realized that people have stories to tell. Whether old or young, these people are worth hearing about. Every single person needs to be told that they're not alone and that they've got their own story to write and they can write it however they want to write it because too many people are telling them not to. These people need to know that when you get the wind knocked out of you, as Sarah Kay says, when you get the wind knocked out of you, it's the only time you can remind your lungs how much they love the taste of air. Keep on keeping on. These are the people that need to become the change makers and not watching the world change and fall apart in front of their eyes. There are so many people like John who may be seen as perfect at their home, but they're struggling. This doesn't apply to just kids. This is a universal obligation that I feel like I have and I feel like I should share with other people. Because I believe we have stories to tell. And with teamwork, leadership, and service, all three of those coupled together, we can create empathy. We can cultivate a culture of empathy in a community like Texas Lutheran University, for the state of Texas itself. Second is the first try, the first go-getter. The third is the discontinuities, the pivot points in your organization, and the last is when it goes from orgo to eco. When it goes from your organization doing your own thing to becoming an organization that's changing the realm, the field of what you're doing forever. I'd say for me, I'm at about the discontinuities point. I'm still trying to make my way through the process. But I'm going to leave with this. My t-shirt says, hope, believe, succeed, and inspire. The reason why we have those 4 messages up there is because it's a cycle. And someone like Kobe Bryant has the hope. Actually, this is San Antonio. Let's do Tim Duncan. When someone like Tim Duncan, he's young, he's not 6'10", and he has the hope that maybe one day I can be an NBA basketball player. And that hope turns into belief, true belief in himself that comes from not only himself, but his peers and his experiences and his mentors in his life. And he's told that he really can do something. And he does it. He puts the work in. He starts to work his tail off to be the best. He wants to succeed as bad as he wants to breathe. And he fights and he fights and he fights, and that success comes. And on draft day, he's picked the first round of the NBA draft to the San Antonio Spurs and ends up becoming an all-star and getting to the NBA Finals and winning on numerous occasions. But then the last part separates the good from the great. It's when Tim Duncan goes into a home, an orphan home, and goes up to a boy, just like Isadora, a boy, and he goes, listen, son, when you grow up, I want you to be better than me, taller than me, faster than me, stronger than me, and don't you let anyone tell you that you can't be what you want to be. He starts to inspire people to act. It's when someone, and a famous actress that's not in rehab, someone like, Jessica Alba, I hope, goes to a little girl at an elementary school who's doing a little musical theater and goes, listen, when you grow up, you're going to be prettier than me, more talented than me, and I want you to have an amazing life. And I hope we can create a culture like that. One of the most famous things, one of my favorite things that I like to say, and it's a quote, but I don't know where it's from, so it's mine now. I like to say, and I'm going to leave you with this. The most powerful force on earth is a human soul on fire. A man or woman with a burning desire. And when people spark that fire in their own heart, sky's the limit. And and it starts becoming a movement. This fire spreads real fast. And it's the people who in the deepest, darkest, coldest valley are the ones who are preaching about the warmth of the sun. And people go to listen to them, to feel the heat. I always say that I want people to inspire people, to inspire people, to inspire people. I'm no hero. I'm nobody special because everyone's special. And I just hope, and I can say that I pray, that one day this fire is going to start a movement. And hopefully we're going to live in a society where girls like Joanne, guys like John, little girls like Isadora, they can be whatever they want to be. And they can do things that's right for themselves, good for the world, and they can be damn bold about it. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate the respect that you gave me today. And please come talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
Students at TLU engage in high-impact educational experiences that include civic engagement, aesthetic expression, critical thinking, and a focus on intercultural knowledge in a community that welcomes the interplay of faith and reason.